Welcome to episode 18 of the Princeton Podcast with Mayor Mark Freda. In this episode, Mark caught up with Ed Truscelli, Princeton Community Housing's Executive Director. Ed described in detail how Princeton Community Housing develops, manages, and advocates for affordable, welcoming, and well-maintained homes, offering all people the opportunity to build more productive and fulfilling lives here in Princeton. Mark and Ed also discussed Princeton's Affordable Housing Challenge and how the town is working to meet its obligations, including several currently planned developments that will include affordable housing. So without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mark Freda, and his guest, Ed Truscelli, for episode 18 of the Princeton Podcast.
Ed, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Good to talk with you.
Yeah, it is good to see you. I appreciate you being here. So why don't we start a little bit, and why don't you tell us about Princeton Community Housing, I guess a little bit about its history and its organization.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. Well, first of all, I'm very lucky to be part of Princeton Community Housing. I've been with PCH for 10 years, but it's been around a lot longer than that. Back in 1967, the founders of PCH really wanted to champion housing as a human right. And many of the folks who founded PCH back then were members of organizations in the community, such as the Houses of Worship, the University, the Institute, the YWCA, many other organizations, and really a cross-section of the community, and hence the community in our middle name. And again, as I said, the idea was really to provide people with quality, welcoming, affordable housing, open and fair opportunities for that housing. And the vision of the organization has been and continues to be that we see Princeton as a vibrant, inclusive community that's home to persons of all income levels and backgrounds. So today, we've matured as an organization, and we have almost 500 rental apartments in Princeton, and most of those are in 4 communities, some of which people in Princeton may be familiar with. Our first community was Princeton Community Village, which is up on Bunn Drive, across from Hilltop Park, and then we have 2 communities on or off of Elm Road, Elm Court and Harriet Bryan House. And then we also have a portion of the Griggs Farm community out on Cherry Valley Road. And that's a unique community in that it's 50% affordable and 50% market rate housing. So it's one of the first, what we call inclusionary, because it includes affordable housing. It's one of the first inclusionary communities in New Jersey, and as many things in New Jersey go, Princeton, is a trailblazer in that regard too. So, that's a quick history of PCH.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ed. It is. I think I should just comment that PCH has provided so much to the community and a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. But even with that done, that kind of leads to my next question, which is, in your mind, what is the need for affordable housing? Locally, but what are you seeing also on the national level?
Yeah, it's again, I don't know if people may be fully aware of the magnitude of the need, but let me start on the national level. And this has just all been, this need has been exacerbated by the pandemic. But even before the pandemic, the statistics will show you, and the National Low Income Housing Coalition is one of the big organizations that advocate for affordable housing. And they will tell you that, for every 10 of the lowest renter income families in the nation, there are only 4 apartments available. So, that just tells you right there that there's an incredible need for quality, affordable housing for low income folks. And it doesn't get any better, in the state level. It's actually for every 10 households, low-income households in the New Jersey area, there's only 3 apartments available. So it is very pronounced need for affordable housing. Princeton Community Housing has waiting lists for the four, communities that I mentioned, as well as some other affordable units that are scattered throughout town. We have approximately 1,400 households on our waiting list. And that's households, that's not people. And there are other, organizations in town that have or that provide affordable housing. The Housing Authority is one, and HIP, Housing Initiatives of Princeton. All organizations, all of us have substantial waiting lists. So, people want to have safe housing, and they want to live in a town where there are many resources, that can help them have a thriving and successful life.
No, yeah, definitely agree. So let me ask the next question, which I think we know the answer, but we ask some questions just to help our listeners understand some aspects of the discussion. But why is providing quality, affordable housing important?
Wow, I can talk for hours about this, but I'll try to be brief. Well, first of all, I think many people don't realize it's a constitutional obligation. Every municipality in New Jersey has to provide its fair share of affordable housing. So there's something called the Mount Laurel Doctrine, which was established in the late or mid 1970s and then reaffirmed again in the early 1980s, which really states that municipality land use regulations have to basically provide affirmative actions to provide realistic opportunities for affordable housing. This was in response to many municipalities' goals and directions to try and exclude affordable housing, frankly, just because that was not deemed desirable by those municipalities. So the court, New Jersey Supreme Court, established this constitutional obligation. So the first reason is because you have to, you have to provide it. That's one thing. But there are other reasons which I hope people would understand as well. And some of those are it's part of fairness and equity and social justice, right? I think a lot of people, again, because of the pandemic, may realize how closely tied good housing is to one's health. If you don't have a safe, welcoming place to put your head at night, a lot of other things just really deteriorate fast. So, health and housing are very tightly intertwined and related. So people really need to have a sound place to live. So I wouldn't call it maybe a moral obligation, but it's a quality of life. It's a fairness issue, and I think everybody has had an opportunity in their lives that they've benefited from. So where PCH is providing opportunities to people who then can take those opportunities and make something out of it, make something for their lives, make their lives better. And I think people also need to realize that, living in Princeton specifically is a game changer. I mean, Princeton is one unique community in so many respects. I mean, we have so many resources here. The school systems are great. Culturally, we have so many things to offer. There's so many organizations in town. It is a place that many people aspire to live in. And I think people who, want to bring their children up in good schools and have all those resources, that goes for people who live in affordable housing too. We're all looking to better our lives. And I think this is part of it, affordable housing. And, some people might say, well, affordable housing, it brings down property values. Well, just the opposite. I think there's a lot of empirical evidence out there. In fact, there was a book written by Princeton faculty members, Climbing Mount Laurel, which pointed out that there really wasn't any detrimental impacts on the community after the Ethel Lawrence homes were built in Mount Laurel. And that was actually, the Ethel Lawrence homes was actually the basis for the Mount Laurel Doctrine that I mentioned earlier. So, there's a lot of good reasons to build and manage quality and welcoming affordable housing. And I think the last thing I'll say is we have residents who have benefited greatly from living in Princeton. I mean, if you look at our website, we have some profiles there. You can see that, people have actually taken this opportunity to live in Princeton and done a lot with it. I mean, one example that comes to mind is Danny Hanna, who is, he graduated from Teachers College in New Jersey, and he's now working as a network operations engineer. And he credits his home environment where he lived at Princeton Community Village, with allowing him to increase his knowledge and confidence so he can, take on life's challenges and succeed. So there's a lot of, just good stories that come out of this. I don't want to, get lost in the numbers and the obligations, but, people actually succeed. And I think that's what this is all about too. There's nothing wrong with helping people. And I think that's what, gives me great satisfaction, that I'm helping people do something with their life.
Yeah. So Ed, I guess the next natural question is who's actually eligible for affordable rental housing in Princeton?
Well, it's open to everyone. Going back to the first thing, about our mission and about affordable housing in general, it's really open to everyone. There's, obviously anyone can apply, but there are eligibility criteria, and most of those are, regarding income. You have to have a certain income range in order to be eligible for affordable housing. So, for example, here in Mercer County, or we are actually, Mercer County is part of a region in New Jersey, and according to the way the affordable housing regulations work on the state level, so it's all based on median income. So, for example, in our region, for a one-bedroom, one-person household, the median income is about $85,000. So a low-income household would be 50% or less of that median income. A very low-income household will be 30% or less of that median income. And then a moderate household would be between 50 and 80% of that median income level. So right there, that kind of gives you a sense for a one-person household, what kind of income range would apply. And then, of course, that changes based on the household size. So, that's the main criteria for determining if someone is eligible for affordable housing. But again, it's open to everyone. There are no restrictions. That's the whole point. It has to be fair. And we actually are obligated by state rules to affirmatively market available affordable apartments to those who are actually least likely to apply. So that may require us to target certain parts of the population, but those are the real select criteria for eligibility.
Right. So okay. So you have the income guidelines that are set by the state, which determine, as you just said, whether it's low, very low, mid. Anyway, but so that gets you whether you're eligible. But then how's your rent determined once you're in a unit?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Generally speaking, regardless of what way the affordable housing is financed, whether it's a state financing or a federal financing, generally what we try to do, or what the rules tell you to do, is people should be paying no more than 30% of their income for housing costs. So whatever an applicant's income is, the rent is set based on 30% of that amount. And that's sort of a government rule of thumb that's been around for a long time, that just says, no more than 30% of your income should be going toward housing, because otherwise then you're burdened, your costs burdened, and you don't have enough money to do the other things, buy food, pay for health care, save for, a college education or a retirement. So, that's the percentage that's been pegged by the federal government for housing costs. So it will vary depending on the applicant, or when a person becomes a resident, that rent may change over time. Some of our programs require a recertification of a resident's income on an annual basis. So we'll take a look at what their income is. If it's changed, that rent may go up or down accordingly. So,
is there a cap on? So let's say your income keeps increasing each year. I mean, so then it's possible your rent's going to keep increasing each year, but again, within that 30% limit.
correct.
Yeah. So one of the, well, let me just comment a little bit as mayor, as like housing in Princeton, right? Because I think one of the goals of affordable housing programs are A, provide housing for people that probably would not be able to get it otherwise, give them a chance to create some equity, put equity away, and at some point move out of the affordable housing into, whether you want to call it working class, middle class, whatever term you go by these days, and then give them a chance. And I think one of the big challenges in Princeton is that the housing in between the very expensive housing in Princeton and the affordable housing, that segment of the housing market keeps disappearing in Princeton. So people really have a hard time moving out of affordable housing if they want to stay in Princeton or even in the immediate area at this point. So that's just me adding an editorial input. And let me get back to my questions. Sorry, Ed, but thanks.
Well, if I could add on to that, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you may find that in Princeton, fewer people might be leaving rental housing because of what you just described, because it is so difficult. And that's why organizations, hey, look, we all work together, so I don't mind, plugging another organization here, but that's why an organization like Habitat is really important, because then that opportunity for home ownership is there and building that equity. And there are other organizations that may be doing that too, but you're right. There are examples. We've had our residents, quote unquote, graduate, if you will, to home ownership, and we're pleased when that happens. But it is a little bit more of a challenge to stay in Princeton because of the appreciation of home values in Princeton.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you again another question that I think most people expect, which is, how has the pandemic affected the residents of PCH and staff?
Very, very dramatically. It's hard to believe, when this all happened, that it would, we'd still be talking about it almost 3 years later. But, I think what it has illustrated, though, is that PCH is not just about, sticks and bricks. We're not just about providing, quality housing. I keep using the word welcoming for a reason, and that's because we have more than just walls and a roof. We have, first of all, I'm blessed to have a wonderful set of colleagues on staff. I'm blessed to have a great board of trustees, very supportive. And during the pandemic, especially during the pandemic, we were able to really show our capabilities in that regard. We have social service coordinators who really help residents to address their challenges that they may have. Actually, all of us on staff are really sort of unofficial social workers. We are always trying to listen and help, and I think again that goes back to just wanting to help people. That's what motivates us. But specifically to your question, I think many of our residents were impacted. They lost either their jobs or lost their earning potential. And we were very, very fortunate to be in Princeton with many, many partners who want to help people too. So we were able to work with the Princeton Children's Fund at the beginning of the pandemic to provide rent relief to our residents. Subsequently, we've been working with Housing Initiatives of Princeton on that. And now PCH has also established its own pandemic rent relief fund through the generous donations of our supporters. So we've been able to keep folks in their unit, in their apartment, in their home. Food assistance we've provided through many partners. I'll just mention a couple in terms of Jewish Family and Children's Services, Arm in Arm. They've been able and still are providing food to many of our households. And again, what we've really been able to do is augment what we've always been doing, which is, providing that social service coordination. So, dealing with the state and county resources in terms of rental assistance and, additional supportive services that are available. And, that's again what we do. We want to help people. Outside of the pandemic, even though we weren't able to get together in person, we still are sustaining the programs that we've always had in place. For example, at Elm Court and Harry Bryan House, we've had a history of providing programming for the seniors there, and we've been keeping that up quite a bit. We have what's called a congregate program over at Elm Court and Harry Bryan House, where seniors can get light housekeeping services, a personal aid on a limited basis, and some meals. At PCV, Princeton Community Village, we are working with the YMCA. We now have a preschool program there in the mornings, and that supplements the after-school program that we've had there for decades. So these are just examples of how our staff and our partners in town, as well as the municipality. I don't want to forget the municipality's help as well. The emergency services, municipal officials, everybody, the health department, my gosh, we've had so many opportunities to work together and help our residents, and we're very grateful for that too.
Yeah, well, the common theme that we find in a lot of these podcasts are people working together, and there's so many groups in Princeton that do try to do that, which helps makes the community a pretty special place.
Yes.
But Ed, what are some of PCH's goals over the next few years? Where are you guys headed?
Well, yeah, I think more than anything else, we want to continue to enhance the quality of life of our residents. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through some capital improvements, making our built environments, our buildings and communities, better. And we're going to continue to expand our social service programming, again, to provide people with the support that they need. We're going to continue to advocate for more affordable housing, not only in Princeton, but throughout New Jersey. And in that regard, we're always looking for opportunities. The ADU ordinance is certainly one of interest to us, and we're going to try and pursue, that with some enthusiasm. Accessible dwelling unit ordinance. We want to look at opportunities where we can weave affordable housing opportunities into, the fabric of the community at large. So, we're looking to really just, be better at what we do, but we also really want to focus on more opportunities for housing because of that need that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I know the town is involved in a lot of things going on with constructing new affordable housing, and I believe PCH is actually helping the town meet its affordable housing obligation, right? So maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is one of the more exciting things I like to talk about. We been working with the town and to help meet that obligation, obviously with all the communities that we have, but we're now engaged in active construction, which I'm happy to say, up at Princeton Community Village. We're building 25 new affordable rental apartments, and we're also at the same time really enhancing the neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods at Princeton Community Village, to make some improvements. So, we're benefiting both the existing residents, and we're going to be bringing some new families in. So everything about the building where the new 25 units will be located is environmentally conscious. We're meeting or exceeding enterprise green standards. So they'll be all electric heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment. Energy efficient appliances. We're ready to go for solar panels on the roof. Electric vehicle parking spaces, stormwater management, all the things that make us sustainable and good stewards of the greater, environment. But it's also great to be able to provide, 25 new homes, and we're proud of that. We're actually going to be kicking off the public phase of our capital campaign. The campaign is called Home Means Hope. And we've been through the silent phase or the quiet phase of our capital campaign, and actually in the next coming days we're going to be going public with many events that will provide more information about what we're doing up at Princeton Community Village and how people can support that effort. And so far we've been very successful in having some of our longtime supporters and trustees, provide financial support for this project up at Princeton Community Village. But we're hoping the greater community will also provide some support as well.
So obviously that capital campaign is very important. But Ed, are there other ways, just like on a yearly basis, on an annual basis, just to help support the organization and the residents?
Yeah, we have generally around Thanksgiving or so, we send out an annual appeal, which, as you mentioned, really is to help sort of on an operational basis sustain or enhance some of the social service programs that we offer to residents, some of that I mentioned before. That, in addition to the capital campaign, is sort of an operational support that we hope people will be interested in taking part in that as well.
So let me switch things up a little bit and just ask one or two questions about you.
Okay.
So what is your background professionally, and how does that impact on what you do every day? What's the fit there?
Well, I started out actually I have an education and background in architecture, and I'm actually still licensed as an architect in New Jersey. But I realized, not too deep into my early career, that I wasn't as good a designer as some of the other people. But I had a desire to bring people together, and your training as an architect kind of requires you to be a good listener and understand where people's ideas and thoughts are. So, I also wanted to help people. My parents certainly had a huge impact on me. And, I can actually relate the story when my dad took me to see what I didn't know at the time was a controlled fire. One of the volunteer fire department was actually doing a controlled fire to do a training. I didn't know that at the time. It was a house. And I remember saying to my dad, where are the people going to live who were in that house? They don't have a home anymore. And then he told me, it was sort of a controlled, test. So that had a huge impact on me. Just like, if somebody doesn't have a place to live, what happens? So I think that's why I got into architecture. And then I realized, I really want to help people. So, over the years, I had the opportunity to work for nonprofit organizations that have provided senior affordable housing and market rate senior housing. I worked with Spring Point for years and actually had a role in developing Stonebridge up in Montgomery. So, now this path has taken me to here to Princeton Community Housing, and I've really, as I said, I'm blessed and I'm glad to be here. And I think my background as an architect helps bring people together and keep things organized. At least I hope it does. So.
Ed, we wouldn't tell you different to your face, no.
Right.
I know you mentioned it earlier, but it's already escaped my mind. How long have you been at PCH?
It'll be 10 years. Yeah, it'll be 10 years in July.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, but it is. I had more hair back at the beginning. That's about the only change.
So let me just let me ask you something. We don't have a lot of time left, but in looking like what's happened with Princeton and how the affordable housing numbers for this round were really decided by the courts, and years ago under state of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, there was a department or group known as COA, and where you had people that were, I believe, trained and whose day-to-day job was to try to figure out what housing obligations should be. So I personally have a real problem with judges trying to figure out how to suddenly become housing experts. I don't mean to put you in a corner, but do you have any thoughts or comments on that? Or
boy, this is another thing I could talk about for hours. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, right now, the Council on Affordable Housing, or COA, has been really a non-existent entity for many, many years, and hasn't served its purpose, which was really to, help implement the Mount Laurel Doctrine. Even when COA was around, there was a lot of, how shall I say this, doubt, uncertainty about the methodology that was used by COA to determine what each municipality's obligation would be. So COA wasn't perfect when it was around, and now that it's not around, it's not helpful. And you're right, we have the courts and judges and quote unquote experts trying to figure out what each municipality is obligated to do. It is not a very good system right now, I can say that. And I wish I had a good answer about a better system, but I know the current system is not one that's going to be sustainable. I think each municipality is frustrated. I think actually all parties involved in the process are frustrated with how it's being done right now. So hopefully, the Governor Murphy or some other, officials will come up with some better ideas. And, we have some thoughts on that, as an organization. But it talk about consensus. We really, are going to have to work hard to find it. But right now, the process is very, very complicated and convoluted. And, the fourth round is coming up. We've been through the first three, but the fourth round is on the threshold. And hopefully there'll be some resolution to how it's, implemented.
Yeah. A lot going on, a lot of moving parts when it comes to affordable housing and giving people the opportunity that they need to have to enjoy what a lot of people take for granted, which is, the safe, affordable place, a dwelling, a place to be.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, anyway, people that are interested in just seeing what's going on with PCH, I just want to make a plug. You guys, I'm sure have a website. So if anyway, I just want to see what's happening. Where do I go on a regular basis to see what's the latest?
Well, yeah, you can go to our website, which would be pchhomes.org, pchhomes.org. You can go there. We also have a Facebook page. I don't know the exact address of that, but if you go on Facebook and do a search for PCH Homes or Princeton Community Housing, you will find our Facebook page. And again, I would encourage folks to check in with our website from time to time, especially as we gear up our capital campaign. But we have resident profiles. We have information for applicants, people who are interested. I forgot to mention, we worked very closely with the municipality on the universal rental application, which really made it easier for folks to apply for affordable housing. So that link is on our website. And there's all sorts of information on our website about who we are and what we do.
Ed, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you and everybody that works for PCH, for all the valuable services that you provide to your residents, but it's for the community overall. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everything you do, and we're really grateful for all that the municipality and the people of Princeton do for us. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the 18th episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced as a community service by HG Media, providing audio and video production services here in Princeton since 1999. If you enjoyed this episode of the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.